Welcome to the Somewhat Frank podcast, hosted by me, Frank Gruber, and joined by my friends and colleagues, Jen Consalvo and John Guidos. This podcast explores the latest trends and advancements in technology and business, including emerging startups and how they shape today while looking forward towards the future. We also enjoy testing new gadgets and products and sharing our findings too, along with our favorite pop culture picks like music, books, and what we're streaming. This podcast is produced in collaboration with our company, Established. Ready to dive in? Time to be somewhat frank. Welcome back to Somewhat Frank Podcast. I'm Frank Gruber, your host. I'm joined today by John Guidos, Jen Consalvo, and Simon Kahan. Thank you all for being here today. How's everybody doing?
Woohoo! Great.
Awesome. Jen, thanks for answering. Collectively. John, what are you up to? We're going to go around the horn here.
Well, it's that time of year. We're rolling into September, so you turn on the AC during the day and the heat during the night, which is my favorite time of year. I feel like this time of year also I'm inundated with football, whether it be my nephews, little league games, college, professional football, just all football all the time. And so I've been enjoying that.
When you
and
say
also
football, you mean not like soccer, actual American football.
American football. That's right, Frank. Thanks for clarifying. And then we have we're going to a wedding in San Diego. So I haven't been back to Southern California in maybe 10 years. So getting ready for that and looking forward to, checking out some of the old hangouts and that sort of thing.
Wow. Has it really been that long since you've been to Southern California?
It's been at least 8 years, but I think more like 10. It's been a really long time. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Jen, what's good with you?
Let's see. I think I'm through my mourning period. Every year, this time of year, I go through mourning of summer, like the loss of summer. Even though there's probably like a few last hurrahs in there, it still hits me hard. It hits me hard. And but I did have a great vacation at the end of August. We went to a place called Booth Bay Harbor in Maine, just up the coast a little ways, and stayed at this awesome place where it was kind of like summer camp for adults, like the thing I'm always asking for. We were able to find it thanks to recommendations from some friends. And it's the kind of place where at any point in time, like I call it on campus, right? Like on the resort, you can jump in a kayak and go out around little islands. You can jump in a sailboat. You can swim in the heated saltwater pool. You can fish from the dock. They have painting in the afternoon with wine. They have a kids club. They have tennis courts and pickleball and all these things. And it was a blast. And I loved it. And I wish it would have been longer.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was really great. Just to be clear, you didn't actually paint with the wine, although I did try to paint with the wine.
People do that. There's a place in Santa Barbara that's known for that. They do wine painting, but this was not that. This was paint and sip. So you paint, you take a little sip of wine, and you paint.
But I have to admit, I went through 2 wines where I actually did try to dip my paint in there, and it didn't work. So.
Yeah, some people just make the mistake because the wine is served in the same cups that you get water to like clean your paintbrush. So there's a lot of missteps in there.
Yeah. It's tricky business. And Simon, what about you? What's going on?
So I haven't been doing anything that sounds amazing. I've been pretty deep into Love Island UK season 1. I have a feeling maybe you guys aren't super into that show, but if you're unaware, it's like they trap like 15 British people in this villa, and then they have to love each other. And like, if you don't find a couple, you're out. And it's like, it makes me feel so, honestly, it actually makes me feel a little stupid. But it's great. I'm really into it. A lot of drama on the island. There's some new bombshells coming in this week. So we'll see how it turns out.
Interesting. Now, is there a US version as well? I'm not as familiar.
Yeah. So there is a US version. There's an Australia version. The UK version, especially in the earlier seasons, they didn't have a lot of like ethical guidelines. So they would do like pretty like they would get super drunk and like, here's your ex now into the, like nowadays, I think there's a little bit more guidelines as to what you can do to these poor people, but it's kind of funny. It's kind of like the Stanford prison experiment in a weird way.
Sounds entertaining. It's probably, I mean, it kind of reminds me of that. What's the name of the show about the ship, Jen, that you like to watch? When you're on the ship?
Below Deck.
Below Deck, yeah, Below Deck. Kind of reminds me of that, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it seems like probably similar things going on.
It's my favorite guilty pleasure, and I only like go back to those shows maybe once every year and a half, but So
Now,
good.
this Love Island, is it physically an island? They're on an island somewhere?
It is an island, and they're in a villa, but I mean, it's sort of like a compound. Like it's not even like there's a pool, but I don't know. There's
Is
nice
it
sort
actually physically in the UK or is it somewhere else?
No, it's in wherever Magaluf is. So like sounds like
Hmm,
Italy or something.
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay,
everyone's getting
check it out.
mugged off and pied off and British stuff, and it's pretty funny.
Interesting. Interesting stuff. I'll have to check that out, I guess. Okay, so next up, I guess I went on that same trip, with Jen, obviously, went to that little break before the school year started, but also was out in Austin, Texas recently, had a chance to lead a conversation, really interesting conversation about space domain awareness. So, for those who are not familiar, there's a lot of stuff in space, a lot of stuff that's been floating around for a while, and just the ways that we've been tracking it have been um somewhat, I don't want to say rudimentary, but like simple, like with like radar and things like that. So, there's a lot more new technologies coming online where they're actually going to be able to keep track of all the different things in space, but space is so large, right? So it's really hard. It's a hard problem, and there's just gonna be so much data. So anyway, really interesting conversation at Fed Supernova, the innovation conference down in Austin, Texas, a few weeks ago. It was probably the hottest week they've had down in Austin, Texas that week. And so definitely got some heat. And obviously, congrats to Capital Factory for putting on a great event. This is the second year I've been down there. They've been doing it for a little bit, and it's worth going down for anyone interested in some of these technologies that are, space or, things related to anything kind of dual use, which would be, government use and obviously consumer use is a good place to go for that. And a lot of the federal agencies are down there. So it was really great. So if you want to, I think I dropped some information about that on a LinkedIn post, but really interesting. Scout, which is a company that we actually invested in with Established Ventures, was on the session as well, had their CEO on there. And it's just a really interesting conversation about what's going to happen. What are the things that are up there? And apparently, I don't know if you guys knew this, but there's actually a nuke up there that was brought up there supposedly by I think it was Russia. So it became part of the conversation. So that's where some of this stuff is like a little bit more important, because like we rely heavily on satellites for GPS and for our getting money out of our ATMs. Like it does a check on your location. So anything location based, obviously the weather, and then obviously things that are more strategic around defense obviously relies on it as well. So there's some big things going on up there to keep it safe. And from the conversation we had, apparently we already are in a Star War. Like, not even kidding. Like they're literally like trying to figure out, like, it's jockeying to keep it safe up there, which was news to me. So, yeah, a little unsettling, but really interesting conversation. All right.
Sounds like
So
fun.
yeah, it's great. So, all right. So diving in, we had, like, this week, there's been a lot going on, in the news, actually the last couple of weeks, and, we got a lot to catch up on. So we'll just jump right in. So, those Apple users out there, Apple's got another phone, number 16. If you can imagine, it's been 16 phones. We're 16 phones deep now with the iPhone, and they just launched it yesterday. It's not coming out yet, but it's going to be the first one with the AI technology. Or so they've got their Apple Intelligence, which is going to be featured in this latest version. It's my understanding that, like, the other phones are not going to be able to comprehend what this AI can do, right? So it's going to be a forcing factor for folks that want that to have to upgrade to either the iPhone 16 or the iPhone 16 Plus or the Pro or the Pro Max. So they've got 4 different versions. I don't know. Are you all thinking? Are you jumping at? Anybody on this podcast jumping to get a new phone, a 16, now that they saw that's coming out?
Not yet. I mean, I have the app, like I have the ChatGPT app on my 15 right now, and it's just another. The one thing about the iPhones is you always get excited to buy the new one, and you pony up the $1,200 or whatever they cost to buy, and then once you get it updated from your old phone, it's exactly the same thing, right? Like you're like expecting it to be like all these fun new gadgets and et cetera, and it's like literally it looks the exact same. So I'm always like bummed out a little bit. The one thing I did want to mention as well, and I don't know if y'all ever stumbled upon these graphs or these images on Instagram, but not only did they announce the iPhone 16, they also did the Apple Watch, and I think the AirPods they recently updated as well. But I'm always blown away by the revenue of Apple products versus other companies. Like, for example, I just pulled one up quickly, and this is in 2020, so it's a couple years old now, but the Apple iPod, just the iPod, the AirPods alone had 23 billion of revenue, and a company like Adobe, which has Photoshop, Premiere, we all use Acrobat, etc. The revenue for that entire company was only 12 billion, right? So you're talking about one product alone of Apple that is almost double that of the entire Adobe company. Those kind of things, then you really realize the power of Apple, right? With like not only that, but their services. That's just one of their accessory products too, right? That's not even their iPhone or computers and that sort of thing. So very interesting stuff.
They're a monster right now, for
I
sure.
feel like Apple is in such a great position too, because their tech is really correlated with like style and like lifestyle, whereas other brands may not be. So Apple, I know maybe among high schoolers or college kids, it's like cool to have like an iPhone or like Mac products. And so I think they kind of have like this hold on the culture a little bit that is very unique among companies, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you mentioned, John, incremental is kind of what you're saying as far as like if you were to go from 15 to 16, it's probably going to be you're going to get the AI features, you're going to get a faster, slightly faster phone. It's going to have better battery life, right? That's what every phone pretty much say new phone has better battery life, and hopefully they don't slow your old phone down to make that happen. They got some heat for that previously. But yeah, but I just actually upgraded to the new Apple Watch, the old new Apple Watch. I think it's now 9, right? So I don't have the new 10 one yet, but I noticed from going from my old Apple Watch, which was like, I'd say it was like 6 or 7 years old, to the new, was quite a shift. So I guess maybe the strategy is like wait, like wait a long time, and then you'll see a huge improvement.
That tends to be my strategy. I really wait until
Yeah.
like I have the monster. I have the monster size.
Are these
Um,
12s? I don't remember what number these are.
I don't even know. I need to check. But
Yeah.
I tend to just wait it out as long as possible till I cannot stand it anymore. There's something really
Yeah.
wrong. And then I go for the upgrade. And then it's like you said, John, then it's like a little bit more noticeable. Like, oh, there's an entirely new camera and it really has all these, differences in it. But it is
Yeah.
getting harder. It's harder and hard. Like I would like to see, like, if I wait another 2 years, will the Apple Intelligence features make it such a different experience, like right out of the gate, that it's going to feel like a totally different phone. Like I am curious if
Mhm.
if that'll happen at some point.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I mean, definitely possible,
I mean, because it feels like it could in some way almost like get rid of the App Store. Like it could start to like, or get rid of, sorry, not the App Store itself, but like get rid of your usage of apps, because it could become so smart and working with different apps and pulling your data and working through Siri or whatever it's going to work through, that you don't even have to have much of an app experience. So I'm very curious where they go with that.
So I will say, all that being said, in my commentary before, I don't know how y'all understood what I was saying or not, but like the iPhone is the one thing that I do not have a hard time spending money on. There's no more powerful tool that we use in our everyday lives other than our iPhone. I mean, in terms of communication with other people, right? Access to others. And so I have no problem buying new iPhones. I think it's like I just said, it's the most powerful tool that we have in our daily lives.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, you're right, 100%. You're walking around with a computer that you're able to do all these things on. And I guess the other thing is tough is that you have seen slowdowns or battery life issues in the past. So like, hopefully you know, that's usually what is a forcing factor for many of us to get the upgrade. Is like, okay, I just can't even use this anymore. It's too slow, or can't get it to charge long enough. But I guess for these other kind of secondary products like the Apple, I got the Ultra Watch actually. So the old Ultra Watch, they've got a new Ultra Watch coming out, I guess. And I was really surprised like how much better it is. It's like it has like 3 days of battery life, whereas my other one I could basically hardly go through a day. It's like you don't need to charge it. Where you could literally sleep in it if you wanted to, and you wouldn't have an issue. Whereas that was an issue before. So that's a huge improvement on what they were doing. And it's making me wonder if I also wear a Whoop. I'm like, do I need this anymore? Because this watch is
Probably
better.
not.
Probably not, right? Although it does tell me when I'm like not getting enough sleep, but I guess the other thing could too. So anyway, it's like, at a certain point, there's got to be some consolidation, is I guess my point. And they're starting to obviously continue to gobble up things. And maybe Whoop is something that, I don't know, they got to think of continue to think about how to
How do you
address
compete?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, so moving along. Anybody excited about Apple Intelligence? Like checking it out?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's cool. I think the marketing is really cool. Like, I think using Apple, like still having AI, but Apple Intelligence, I think that's pretty smart. Yeah, I guess I'm excited. I feel like things just keep popping up. Like, it's hard to be excited about so many things, and everyone's trying to get our attention all the time. So
Yeah.
I think we're
Yes.
spoiled too. I know for me personally, like I expect it of Apple, right? Like we spend so much money. They're such a huge player in the space. Like I just expect it of them. So I don't know how else to say that. I mean, ChatGPT is like enough for me. Like it's powerful and I'm having enough fun messing around with that, so I guess I just expect it of Apple.
Yeah, I expect it, but I've also that is like one of the areas that I've been sorely disappointed by them over the past few years, like with the, Chinese Siri, waiting for updates every single time, thinking, oh, it's going to be so much better, and it just hasn't been. I would like to think we're there, like we're getting there now that they're partnering and they're going to work with, ChatGPT and others and bring that technology in. I think I've said this before on this podcast. There is like Apple can own this. Like if they work with partners and integrate this the right way, this thing is going to become like exponentially even more valuable. It has so much potential, but I'm just like, I am a little nervous. Like, where is it at? Is it really worth, like you said, John, you've got ChatGPT on your phone. Is it going to be that much different of an experience yet? I'm really curious to find out.
Yeah, great point. All right, we're gonna move along. I don't know if you guys saw the all the viralness of this essay that Paul Graham put out. So not last Sunday, it might have been the Sunday before, but it was basically discussing founder mode. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but basically distinguishing founder mode versus manager mode in running companies. And he pulled it from, basically a talk that Brian Chesky had given, Airbnb's founder, right? He had given a talk about, running his company, all that, and he had mentioned some things, and he basically pulled it from that. And so Paul Graham from Y Combinator and Airbnb being a Y Combinator company kind of is now talking about this founder mode and this founder, and more or less, founder mode is very deeply involved in day-to-day operations, while manager mode is more like where you start hiring out different people and delegating your different parts of that middle management. And so more or less there's a lot of debate online about this over the last week or so. And it's really, as you scale a company, it can be really hard to be in founder mode all the time. But I guess what Paul's arguing is that you should be in founder mode for the majority of the time, even when you're to the point where until it gets painful. And because ultimately you want to be involved in all these different decisions that shape the culture, and really crucial when it's early stage kind of business. So I wanted to throw it out there for you all to kind of discuss this founder mode versus manager mode. And I know there was also some pushback. As Silicon Valley is obsessed with founder mode. Women in general that run companies, maybe gave some pushback about this for several reasons. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit too. So I don't know. Let's chat about this founder versus manager mode. What are y'all thinking?
So I'll jump in. Sorry, Simon. I think it's really important to think about the company stage. And founder mode is, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's really being in the business, like every single part of the business, and what many would be considering micromanaging, right? It's very, very hands-on. And to a certain extent, you have to do that when you're starting a company, right? And even as you're starting to grow, you have to, like, the founder or founders have to be involved in making sure that you're steering it in the right way. Balancing that with culture, of course, and giving some people freedom to move. But as you grow, that you can only take that so far. You can't successfully scale. And when I talk about scale, I'm talking about hundreds, moving from hundreds to thousands of employees. Like there's just no way. And so it really becomes, in my mind, a question of when and how, right? So at some point you do have to start relinquishing. You have to bring in people who are smarter than you at certain areas, because as a founder, you don't know everything, right? You know everything up to a certain point, and then you've got to bring in people who are smarter and more skilled, more experienced than you at certain things, and then figuring out how you work with them. And that's the only way to scale at a certain point. So that's just my take on it. And I think what Brian's point was he was kind of saying, yeah, I did that too quickly. I relinquished, I kind of separated myself from the details too fast. And so I think there's some kind of balance that needs to happen there. And you have to, and many of us, we make mistakes at it. Sometimes you do step away and give up control too fast, and then you find you have to, lean back in a little bit to the details.
Yeah, and that's, I guess I should, Paul Graham is basically saying that switching to manager mode too early can set certain early stage companies, off course, because you're bringing in professional managers that lack necessarily the vision, or maybe don't have the same knowledge of every intimate situation about what you're trying to do, and it could change your product and your culture. And I think that's kind of his point. And it kind of got blown up as like you should always be in founder mode. It's kind of the way I think people are perceiving it. So interesting stuff. Anybody else, any thoughts, want to weigh in?
Well, having lived through this, like you and Jen have as well, Frank, I read the whole article and a lot of it made sense to me. And I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but I've been playing with the idea recently of, this kind of correlates directly with the article of, founders versus managers. And the dynamic that I like to consider, I've been considering lately is, does the company work for me or do I work for the company? And I've been really playing with that, I don't know what you want to call it, paradigm lately, in terms of, I think the best leaders oftentimes, demonstrate that they're actually, what their actions do are benefiting the whole rather than themselves. And I think there needs to be a balance, because obviously, right, with startups as well, I mean, you're building it for a reason, oftentimes to exit, which is going to benefit the founder in the end, right? And I think we can all agree on that most of the time with the startups that we have dealt with in the past. And so there needs to be this balance, I think, between it's a fine line in terms of, my actions every day as a manager, are they to benefit me and my pockets and my family, or are they benefiting the company as a whole to keep moving forward so that, everybody can have food on their plates and insurance and those sorts of things. So I don't know. It's one of the things that resonated with me while I was reading the article.
I mean, definitely from a capitalistic perspective, but I also feel like some, generally founders are driven for other reasons, right? Like there's, reasons to improve, whether it be transportation or, housing or whatever. So I think there's education, think of some other areas where people are tackling problems because they're super passionate about it. And then ultimately that passion gets, I guess, dissolved or numbed a little bit down when you start moving people out, and they maybe don't have the same thoughts around that particular item, whatever it is you're
No, that's actually a
driving.
really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because
Yeah.
something I was overlooking, I think, when I was thinking about all of this. It's a huge motivator for companies, and when you're trying to be a cheerleader for all of your employees and give them a reason to get up in the morning and come to work, oftentimes the importance of the purpose of the company, right? The goals and
Right.
I don't know why I'm blanking here right now, but the goals of the company are important as well. So
Yeah, I mean that bigger
vision,
mission.
and the vision and mission of the company is what I meant. So
Right, definitely.
Well, there's all kinds of things you can do to be in alignment, right? I mean, that's why, particularly for high growth tech startups, stock options have always been a major player, right? Like people, you want to give ownership. You want people to feel that ownership. There's still this difference between sort of that founder outlook and a manager mode, right? And that's where some people are saying, do you want a Steve Jobs or do you want a Tim Cook? But you could also argue that while Steve Jobs was a visionary and he was renowned, right, for being in everybody's business, right? Like he's definition of founder mode. Tim Cook is a manager and operator, but he's taken the company to new heights. Like, look at what John just said. Like, it has never been more successful. So again, like, it so much of it to me depends on a company's like where it is in its life cycle. And there's probably some really difficult points in growth where that's hard to balance, where you're moving between, founder mode and manager mode and trying to figure out where are we at? Can we have more managers who are in alignment, and how do we bridge that and grow that way? And that's, I've never scaled a company to that size. There aren't that many people who have, so it's got to be a difficult thing.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's a whole kind of, I guess, Brian Chesky has also said that like a lot of people reached out to him when this came out and were basically saying, many women actually saying that they're not allowed to run in founder mode. And obviously he believes that needs to change. And so one of those was Whitney Wolfe Herd, who's the founder of Bumble, basically said she's basically been running in founder mode for 10 years and got attacked every single day for it, more or less. And it's basically just basically just different. Like it's perceived as different, right? Because it's more aggressive, and if you're, a woman being aggressive can sometimes be perceived as being not so nice person when really you're just trying to get stuff done. So I think that's the unfortunate part, and obviously needs to change culturally. All right, so yeah, so let's see what else we got today. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Or are we moving on? I'd like to say this is good news, but it's really not. The next topic is really interesting, but it's about, are we in a silent recession, startup recession? And there's an article I pulled that's talking about the silent venture capital and silent recession, and it's talking about data from similar to like that of 2008, and because between 50 to 70% of venture-backed startups went out of business last year, so not great. And we know just from like folks that have been raising forever, it's the ones that are getting it done are really gutting it out for a year or so, some of them even longer, to raise their round, or maybe they're taking it, some of which are taking down rounds to get it done and keep it moving and lowering their valuation. So it's a weird time out there for startups for sure. Investors are sitting on the sidelines and doing, getting the pick of the litter, more or less, of the types of startups that they want to invest in. And so it's a really interesting time from that, different from the boom that we had with startups over the course of the last, I'd say, decade up to this point.
What's the typical rate of failure? Like,
I mean,
yeah. So this year,
9 out of 10 businesses fail, right? We know that, but the difference is this is stuff that this number being, I guess the companies are talking about we're in the last 5 years, right? So 50 to 70% of the companies have raised in the last 5 years have gone out of business.
They raised at least $1 million, right?
At least $1 million, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I mean that's pretty typical, right? 9 out of 10. That's actually above average in some cases.
Well, 9 out of 10 includes
small businesses too.
Small businesses, right? Yeah. So you're talking about Main Street, mom and pop stores. Yeah. So that's a good question, Simon. It has been particularly difficult for, and it has been for a while now, right? To go from, like your first round to a Series A, and then continued funding. It's getting harder. I think we've seen investors out there for now a few years telling folks, buckle down, you've got to manage your teams, you've got to manage your headcount, you're going to have to be in this position for a little while. And a lot of them are saying that's just that hasn't happened enough. So you're seeing the companies who are really managing their cash well, they're hanging in there, but a lot of them have not. So yeah, it's we've seen it. I mean, we've seen the difference. So it's a good question. We should go back and look at the numbers, but we've definitely seen it in our own portfolio and out with other portfolios.
Do you
Yeah.
think
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, do you think there's a relationship between like the industry these startups are in and the failure rate? Because I imagine so, right? Like, but and it would be crazy to say like maybe AI related kind of startups that maybe don't deliver on all their promises.
Well, the AI startups are getting funded, right? A lot of them, right? They think that's the difference. So, like if you're in a different industry that's not AI, it can be difficult, right? We know we've had a few different companies. I mean, the bottom line is if you're actually in business and doing well, and your business is generating revenue and all that, sometimes it's a cash flow issue, right? Like your business is growing too fast, you need more cash to keep it going, kind of thing, because to do what you're doing at scale takes more cash, and you're doing it faster or whatever. So I think in some instances it's just success is your worst enemy, I guess, because it's causing you to need more cash quicker. But at the end of the day, it's like you see these industries like AI are obviously are able to get the funds relatively more easily than others. So
I think the most important take from that art. Oh, sorry, Frank.
Go ahead.
I think the most important take from that article is basically it's just cash is drying up, so investors are pulling back a little bit and being a little bit more, conservative with things, and then also they're prioritizing things like sustainable growth and profitability over rapid expansion. So a lot of those fluff numbers we've seen in the past are just basically, you hire a CFO to come in and just show, you extrapolate your numbers up significantly to show that you're going to hit billions of dollars in revenue. That doesn't fly as much anymore as showing that you're slow and steady and making money is more important these days. So,
which is interesting because it's always like you need to show that hockey growth, right? Hockey stick growth, and I think that's probably maybe they're calling there's a little more questioning of that kind of setup. And I think interestingly, like coming originally from the Midwest, right? And raising money in the Midwest is different than raising money in Silicon Valley or in New York or wherever, because they would, want actual business numbers like around it versus like these projections. And so I think it's a little easier to raise around. We talked about this before, John, too, right? It's easier to raise on on an idea with no revenue than it is to show numbers. But maybe that tide is changing a little bit when you start to really see this kind of a trend. But in a similar trend, Andreessen Horowitz, which is a big firm out in the West Coast, decided to open up a Miami office out during COVID when everyone was flocking to the beach, and they basically have just shut it down after 2 years. A lot of which was, I think that one was focused on crypto, but I'm not really 100% sure. But part of which is because their value of their investments has dropped from $5.5 billion in 2022 to 400 million in Q2 of 2024. So that's quite a difference, and that's partly related to what we just talked about, right? Like companies fail.
Yeah.
So,
From like a disaster mitigation standpoint, what do you do if you're that person who has the 3 years left on the lease? How do you possibly salvage, I'm sure, the financial disaster that is?
Oh, if you run out of money, you mean?
Yeah, well, it says they closed their Miami Beach office just 2 years into the 5-year lease. And I'm just curious.
I'm sure they just decided to cut it because it was smarter to cut it than to stick it out, right? So they probably had some fee or negotiated
Yeah,
it.
probably crazy, right? I mean, gosh, I don't know.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, so obviously shift. Remember, I don't know if you guys remember, it was only a couple years ago. Everyone was like, Silicon Valley's dead. We're not doing it anymore. We're going to Miami. Now we're back. So that's I think partly
around the same time. All we were talking about was NFTs, Web3, and crypto.
Yeah,
everybody's moving to Miami, and now it's kind of coming full circle now with after the pandemic. So I think it's just one of those things that's
It's a weird time.
The pendulum swings both ways, and so now it's
Yeah,
coming back
and you
around.
talk to people in San Francisco and they're like, everyone's back. Everyone who made a big stink about, oh, I'm moving to Florida, I'm moving to Texas, maybe they still have some setups there for tax purposes, but sounds like they're all back in
And
San
New
Francisco,
York
back in
too.
New York.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. Yeah, so it was an interesting time, 2020.
Can't keep people away from the cities.
No. Speaking of interesting time, anybody get bit by a mosquito this weekend?
Oh, like every day.
Okay. Well, I don't want to scare you, but there is a
Oh,
cause
you
for
already have. It's okay.
slight alarm, raising the slight alarm. Mosquitoes are really nasty critters these days. They're carrying all sorts of viruses, and obviously West Nile is one we're very familiar with. There's Zika, and there's a plethora of
Zika.
other. Was it Zika?
Zika. Was it Zika virus?
Yeah.
Zika, yeah. Did I call it Zinka? Isn't that
Yeah.
that was what's Zinka? Is that something?
Well,
Zinc
zinc
is
is-
like, the stuff you
Oh.
put on your nose. It's
I think I'd combined zinc and Zima, which
like
was a
sunblock.
drink back in like the 1990s. So I combined them all into one thing. That would be a good product, actually. Keeps your nose. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a new one though, EEE, which I don't know. Actually, another one that's kind of causing some alarm, and actually, I think unfortunately killed somebody out in New Hampshire, which is close to here. So yeah, keep abreast on the situation with mosquitoes, and try not to get bit, because they are carrying a bunch of things, and there's not a lot you can really do about it at this point. There's no vaccinations, or I mean, other than getting rid of mosquitoes, right? So
That's why we keep monster spiders all around our yard.
right.
They
Yes,
eat mosquitoes, right? Like everywhere I turn right now, there's like spiders that are like this big. Fortunately, they like pose no harm to humans, the ones we have here, but they are everywhere. And I think it's just because of the proliferation of mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Same thing in Vermont. I've changed my tune on spiders. I'm pro spider now.
Oh,
Yeah, I used to be pretty anti spider, but I think we sat down and figured it out.
I think
So,
you're just
yeah.
Friends,
growing
not
as a
foe.
person.
They
you
are-
and the spider, or you like who
Yeah.
sat down?
Just the spider community of Vermont, in my dad's
Nice.
basement. Yeah.
And you read a little Charlotte's Web and
Charlotte's Web. I understood
Came
sort of
up
where
with
they're
it.
coming from a little bit.
Nice. Speaking of kind of things similar to that, I wrapped up my 5th season of the Elms Watch this year. We had our annual meeting in the last week, so Elms Watch is over for those interested in bugs, because there are these beetles that try to eat the elm trees. So
Oh, emerald ash borer, right? Is that?
yeah, absolutely.
Awful
Very
for
familiar with that
ash
one.
trees.
Yeah, so we're my trees, I've protected this last year. None of them died, thankfully. We had one slight scare in July, but it was okay. They medicated, and all of a sudden we're good. So we only lost one tree, and it happened to be the one right in front of the library. So I don't know what happened with that one, but it seemed like one that we should have kept a better eye on. But it sometimes doesn't mean that you didn't watch it. It's just, things happen, bugs fly. So anywho, so that was this season. I may be joining other committees similar to that. So we'll see. We'll see. Speaking of watching, I was watching Elms. What has everybody been watching lately? I know I've watched Hard Knocks. Anybody watch Hard Knocks Training Camp, Chicago Bears, Max?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched every episode. I love Hard Knocks, and I always think I should have stayed involved with football in my life to some, even like Little League coaching or something like that, because I love just the idea of, being around a team. So I've been watching, or I watched every episode of that one. And then I know we're gonna talk about some other stuff, but I've also been watching Bad Monkey with Vince Vaughn on Apple TV,
Yeah.
which I like a lot. I like he's so quick and he's kind of snarky, and that's been a really good whodunit kind of a mystery show that I've been into lately.
Nice. What about anybody watching Only Murders in the Building, season 4?
Oh
I
yeah.
need to catch up a little bit, but so good. So
It is
good.
good. Simon, what about you? You've been watching Love Island UK, and we know that.
Yeah, so I've been Love Islanding it. I recently managed to get my roommate's Hulu subscription login info, so
Nice.
I'm back on Hulu, and
Nice.
I've been rewatching. I don't know if you guys have seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia,
Oh yeah.
but it's this show I was obsessed with in high school, and then I'm
Nice.
watching it now, and when I was younger, I actually thought that's how like it would be when you're older and like your gang like running a bar. It's actually really damaging. Like I should, I didn't have like a father figure or something, I guess, because I really like Dennis. But regardless, watching a lot of It's Always Sunny.
Nice. That's a nice sunny show.
But I love Shonda Rhimes, all things Shonda Rhimes. So I was just catching up on the last season 3 of Bridgerton, which is that very fun, sexy period show, which I am not into those types of shows, but Bridgerton makes it all fun. I mean, just their score alone, where they turn like all these pop songs into these like super classical, playing them at the fancy balls kind of thing. Like all of a sudden you realize they're dancing a waltz to Taylor Swift. I mean, just makes it a little fun.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't watched that, but I know you're going to be excited about Emily in Paris is back for season 4, so I know you like that one. So
Thumbs
get
up.
ready for that next. But I actually really the Hard Knocks one that we started talking about at the beginning, Hard Knocks training camp. The reason I like that one so much is because it got you to understand the players, and I'm a Bears fan, so I thought it was really great. So I think they should do that for every team. Like I think they should just like have a team following each team so that you know what the heck's going on.
Well, Notre Dame did that, Frank. They actually hired their own film crew to do a type, a Hard Knocks type of show for themselves.
Because I honestly think it's going to help. Like I think the
Oh,
Bears
yeah.
they played their first game and they won, but you actually knew the players. You feel a little bit more, a little bit more tied to them, I guess, or something. I remember like '85 Bears, right? I was a little kid when that happened, but it was still like everyone knew the '85 Bears and like knew all the players and all the names and like football team's huge, right? So I don't know,
Yeah,
just putting a little more character around each person makes it like a little more like connected.
exactly. And even Jen, I know you're not the biggest like football fan necessarily. I know you always say go sports, right? So I'm not picking on you, but um there is value in, I mean, there are storylines, right? It and it's always fascinating to me from like an organizational or an operational standpoint, like all of the things that need to happen to make that game go on Sunday, right? I mean, there's like, think about it. There's like trash people that are involved. There, you got to feed all of everybody. You got to have security. You got to have parking people. Like from the bottom all the way to the top, how much is involved in putting on this sport? I mean, it's obviously a multi-billion-dollar industry, but I don't know, I just find that stuff very fascinating, to be running a ship like that to make everything happen. It's very fascinating to me.
And I agree with what you both are saying. Anytime I may not watch games or a lot of games, but I have watched over the years various, documentaries and shows about teams, about players. And anytime I see something like that, I get so connected, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh wow, that is really cool. Like I can't remember the name of the documentary about this is gonna show my lack of knowledge, but what was it called about the basketball players, the 5 of them who went from
Fab Five.
like, yeah.
Yeah, Fab Five, Michigan.
So when
Yeah.
you watch something like that, all of a sudden you feel so connected and like, okay, now if someone talks about that, I feel a little bit more interested and connected. And I joke that Hard Knocks, I only watch the ones with Simone on them because I love Simone Biles and she's awesome. And people who only want to watch certain games because they think Taylor Swift might be there, that's okay. And I think it's really smart of these teams to capitalize and build on this stuff and draw people in because we're humans and we care about it's called human interest for a reason, right? And I may not be able to connect with like being on the 10-yard line, but I can connect with the humans who are behind it.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of wrap that up, so Jonathan Owens, husband to Simone Biles, actually returned a blocked punt for a touchdown this week, and so kind of ties it all in. Bears won, so because of that, one of those key plays from him. So anyway, I get 100% agree, and I think hopefully they do more of that kind of stuff. But I know we're at time. We got to wrap here. on a high note. We're going to leave on a high note because we talked about some deadly mosquitoes and some dire situations with startups and whatnot. Let's try to end on a high note. It is going to be fall here soon. What's the one thing you're looking forward to here in September as things are changing? You see some leaves changing, things like that. Who wants to go first?
Oh, I'll start. I just off the top of my head, I live in central Indiana, a little bit north of Indianapolis. We get some of the craziest fall skies, like the colors that are involved in between the sunset and the leaves and even like the plowing of the fields and the harvesting of the corn. You get the dust in the air. I don't know how to explain it, but these skies out here are wild. And so I was just driving the other day and I was thinking about that. So I am looking forward to the fall skies out here in farm country.
Nice. Jen or Simon? Jump on in.
My plan is to I want to get a large group of leaves, like a leaf pile, and then I want to jump into it. And well, I used to do that a lot as a kid, but you don't see a lot of adults doing it. It was so fun. It was so much fun. So I think I'm going to try to replicate that.
I can't wait to hear about that.
I know there's going to be a lot of
video of that.
It's going to be a really big pile because Simon, you're very tall.
I know it's going to have to be a tall, lanky pile of leaves.
Yes.
Well, so you need some big shade trees that have a lot of leaves. So find that. It should be good.
Yep. I'm in September. I actually really like up here in the Northeast. We usually have a few days of summer that comes back. So all of a sudden, it's all cold, and then all of a sudden you have a few days of like 80 degrees. Yet there's a lot of the tourists are gone. The beaches aren't as full. You get to, maybe have some lingering afternoons at the beach on the weekend. And like you said, John, like the skies are so much prettier. Like I look back at some of my favorite sunset pictures and they're from early fall. So yeah, I think until I get to like October, then I'll be more excited about some of the deep fall activities. But right now it's like some of that lingering late summer activities.
Yeah, so the one thing, and we'll wrap on this, is we also have soccer Saturdays, right? We're probably have football Saturdays over there, John, right? Because they don't do soccer where you're at.
Oh yeah,
but they only we've got soccer Saturdays and all that. So it's just those brisk mornings and obviously beautiful warm afternoons. So looking forward to that. Hopefully everyone has a great week here ahead, and hopefully something you learned on this or we talked about was interesting to you. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for being part of the Somewhat Frank podcast. Thanks for listening to the Somewhat Frank podcast. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe and leave us a review. We love the feedback and are grateful to have you as a listener. Have a great day.